Good morning. You may have heard of a war back in the 1700s. A bunch of British colonists had decided they were actually Americans, thank you very much, and were fighting for their independence from Great Britain. Well, the fight for independence was a little more complicated if you were one of those Americans who another American enslaved. For Friday, November 7th, it's your Loud Now Morning Minute. Head to Dodona Manor this Veterans Day for the 21st Annual Veterans Day celebration with the George C. Marshall International Center, the town of Leesburg, and Loudoun County. The fun starts at 10 a.m. with free tours of Dodona Manor, free coffee from Simply Bee, and free cookies from Mom's Apple Pie. At 11 a.m., a keynote address by ID Me founder and CEO Blake Hall. And at noon, free barbecue from Mission Barbecue and live music by Melissa Quinn Fox. Rain or shine, free parking and shuttle service by Cartwheels. Check out georgecmarshall.org/events. Thanks for being with us. I'm Rence Green. In 1775, military hostilities in the American Revolution were just getting underway. And 250 years ago today, facing growing unrest in the colony of Virginia, the royal governor of Virginia, John Murray, 4th Earl of Dunmore, issued what would be known as Dunmore's Proclamation. That proclamation did two main things. It put Virginia into a state of martial law, and it offered freedom to, and I quote, all indented servants, Negroes, or others who joined the British Army. That was not nothing. At the time, according to research at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation and the University of Virginia, nearly 40% of the population of Virginia was enslaved. Dunmore accepted between 800 and 2,000 people who had escaped slavery into the British Army, forming the Royal Ethiopian Regiment, which was active until Murray fled the colony in 1776. It's regarded as the first black loyalist regiment in the war. Tomorrow, a program sponsored by the Black History Committee of the Friends of Thomas Balch Library will take a deeper dive into the role that enslaved and formerly enslaved people played in the Revolutionary War on both sides of the fight. The program was put together by Alicia Cohen, a member of the committee who's been uncovering stories about black soldiers and families since joining Loudoun's VA 250 committee last year. That's the committee formed for the celebrations of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Her research started with a small team, including artist Gertrude Evans and historian Travis Shaw. Originally, they were going to be done with their project over the summer, but their research kept turning up stories of black soldiers joining the British in hopes of gaining their freedom, and others joining the Americans to win freedom from British rule.
They both are looking for freedom, but they did it in different ways, which is no different in the civil rights efforts here in the United States, or the Underground Railroad.
She said their stories are rarely told. Among those stories are the flight to Canada and Nova Scotia after the war by both black loyalists and white loyalists with the people they enslaved to escape the harassment of their neighbors after the war.
When they went to Canada, simultaneously while they're going to Canada, they're taking their slaves with them. And so while the black loyalists are going to Canada and becoming free, they're in a community of both enslaved and free again. And if they're not careful, they could be re-enslaved. So they had to carry passes.
The speakers at the symposium are all descendants of black loyalists or patriots or both. Rick Murphy is the President General of the Society of First African Families of English America. Shelley Viola Murphy is the Genealogist General. And Andrea Davis is the Executive Director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. The symposium will be at the Thomas Balch Library in Leesburg from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tickets are $35 for the Friends of the Thomas Balch Library members, $45 for 9 members, and $65 at the door. And we've got the link to tickets in the story on our website. Go to loudounnow.com/Morning Minute to check out the whole story. In other news, and specifically in other Revolutionary War news, sometimes we're current, sometimes it takes us a while to get around to a story, members of the Sons of the American Revolution gathered at New Jerusalem Lutheran Church near Lovettsville last weekend to mark 5 more grave sites of people who supported the War for Independence. Stone Patriot markers have now been placed at 33 burial plots in that historic cemetery. Most of those marked the final resting place of war veterans, but some also highlight the service of community members who supported the war effort. Among those honored last weekend were 2 people who paid the local supply tax to support the war effort. Historian Edward Spanos said that's not like paying your taxes today. It was not automatic that you would pay your taxes, in part because there was no census and the county had no listing of people who actually lived up here. In his words, the county didn't know who lived up here, and for the most part, they didn't care. At the time, northern Loudon was frontier land. You also couldn't e-file taxes at that time. Paying that tax meant a trip to Leesburg, so many people just didn't. There are details of the 5 people they honored last weekend in the story on our website. Sentencing has been delayed for the former Southern States employee convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the home explosion in Sterling last year that killed firefighter Trevor Brown and injured 13 other people. The judge is considering a new motion from the defense to set aside the guilty verdict or to schedule a new trial. Roger Bentley was convicted in July following a week-and-a-half-long jury trial. A 4-hour sentencing hearing had been scheduled for yesterday afternoon. But earlier yesterday, defense attorneys filed an 86-page motion requesting the circuit court set aside that verdict and acquit Bentley or schedule a new trial. The motion claims the jury's verdicts were based on, quote, conjecture, assumption, and speculation rather than on competent evidence proving guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. They argued the evidence presented in the trial falls short of proving criminal negligence beyond a reasonable doubt. Defense attorneys contend there was insufficient evidence that Bentley knew the propane tank was leaking, this would be the tank that caused the explosion, prejudice against Bentley from aftermath evidence, including testimony about tangential injuries, and insufficient evidence to support a finding of proximate cause. Circuit Court Judge James Plowman said the defense's motion was not factually frivolous, and there may be some merit to the arguments, and rather than push the sentencing hearing through, gave the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office until December 19th to file a reply. And we have some file-up reporting on Tuesday's landslide elections. Fourth quarter campaign finance reports are yet to be released, but the Virginia Public Access Project reports winner Abigail Spanberger nearly doubled the spending of Republican Winsome Earl Sears in the race for governor. Spanberger spent $61.5 million, while Earl Sears spent about $34 million. This is a far cry from the last race for governor, in which Republican Glenn Youngkin and Democrat Terry McAuliffe were nearly tied on campaign fundraising. Of note, the top donor in Virginia elections this year was the House Democratic Caucus, which spent $25 million across multiple races. Compare that to the previous state elections in 2023, when they spent less than half that at $11 million. The only race where Republicans outraised and outspent Democrats was in the race for Attorney General. Incumbent Jason Miyares raised $23 million to Jay Jones's $13 million. Democrats, as you may have heard, won every statewide election, all 5 of Loudon's House of Delegates races, and that included picking up House District 30, where John McAuliffe unseated Republican Gary Higgins. McAuliffe will be the first Democrat to represent that part of Virginia in 3 decades. We've got more details in the story on our website, so get the full story on this and all these stories over at loudounnow.com. On today's Get Out Loudon calendar, you made it to Friday, and that means live music everywhere. No Stoplight is at Vanish Farmwoods Brewery. Marion Schieffer is at Loudon Brewing Company. So Fetch is putting on the Ultimate 2000s Dance Party at Tally Ho Theater, and plenty more. And if you're looking for something a little different, head over to the Lincoln Barn Dance and Social at the Lincoln Strawberry Festival Barn. Get tickets on our calendar. Check out the rest of the events calendar at getoutloudon.com. And if you like the Morning Minute, see if you can get the band at the Barn Dance tonight to play the Morning Minute jingle to tell all your friends about the podcast. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and it'll be waiting for you there every morning. Okay. Have a great day.